Go.
Okay. Good afternoon, all the punters
Would you believe good evening,
in
Joe?
the blue corner. This is Joe coming to you from Bangkok. Look, I've got some really sad news. Well, it is for me. It's probably good news for the punters and Vince and that. Unfortunately, I bid for a very big army contract about 9 months ago, and I'd forgotten all about it. And then the other day they rang me up and they said, yeah, you got the gig. And unfortunately, that means I can't do the Sunday show. However, I'm handing over the reins to one very trustworthy, Mr. Chris Beach. So on that note, I'll introduce Beachy, as he's known to us, the librarian, and I'll let Beachy introduce our regular guests, Vince and Steve. Over to you, Beachy.
Thank you, Joe. First of all, before I get into the panel, I'd like to thank you, Joe, for getting this all started. If it wasn't for you, Vince, myself, and Steve wouldn't have a platform to do what we do. So first of all,
that's okay.
Thank you.
Cool. I'll try to make some regular appearances.
By the way, Joe, we're all on 10% commission out of your contract there with the Thai government.
Come over and collect it. I'm happy to give it to you.
Yeah, sure thing.
Joe, the procurement process in Thailand is very different to that of a Victorian or a federal government in Australia, I would imagine.
It normally is. It normally isn't, because here it's not what you know, but it's who you know. So that's how I actually got it. To be honest, it wasn't a bribe as such. It's I'm a member of a group called the AusCham, which is the Australian Chamber of Commerce, and it's basically all Australian people getting together trying to help each other in business. And there's a lovely lady there who was educated in Australia, and she's a Thai person, and she knew my other business was struggling, and she said to me, oh, leave it to me, I'll get you a contract. And when it fell through, she was really apologetic. She's, oh, I'm really sorry. Normally they listen to me. And then she rang me the other day and she said, Joe, it's on. You're in. You're going to get a phone call in about an hour. And lo and behold, about 30 minutes later, I get this phone call from another lady who was educated in Australia at Duntroon, and she's a high-ranking general. And I'm just waiting for her to speak to me about what I have to grease her palm with. I know that phone call is coming, so I'll let you know what happens. All right, guys, I've got to go, but all the best. I'm leaving you in capable hands. See you guys.
All the best, Joe.
Thank you very much again. All right, so as you already know, that's what's happened. My name is Chris Beach, aka the librarian to most of the people here. With me this evening, I have the great Vince Loggiasano. How are you, mate?
G'day, Chris. Great to have you navigating our show, and I'm sure you'll do yourself and all of us proud in the way you do that. You're a very capable person. You should be with all those books that you're reading behind you every week. And it's great to have our great friend Steve Khatib, also here in Melbourne. So we don't have to talk about whereabouts in the world we are anymore. We're all basically in Melbourne. I think we can stop doing that at the start of every show.
Absolutely. Yeah, thanks, Vince. And good to have, back in the radio days, it was a panellist.
Yes.
So Chris is almost the panellist or producer in his many roles, many hats that he's wearing.
Yes, indeed.
Exactly right.
Well, we've got a big show. We've got a big show coming up, and we're going to touch on a few AFL subjects. And as you can see, I've got the Christmas tree up behind me there, Chris. I'm sure you'd be impressed with that, wouldn't you?
Yes.
I'm even auditioning to be Santa Claus.
Mate,
it's got lights too now.
Already.
Dear, I haven't had that haircut yet since we got out of lockdown here in Victoria. But anyway, look, I wanted to say to everyone, if you're out there watching, if you want to take part in the program, please, we'd love to have your comments and your feedback. By all means, do that. Whether you're a member of the YouTube channel or a subscriber to the YouTube channel, or whether you're doing it via Facebook, please leave us your comments and ask any questions that you want us to discuss. We're more than happy to take on board anything that is brought up even on the spot during the show. So it is a live show. It isn't pre-recorded, as you can probably tell. So by all means, we'd love to have as much interaction with our viewers as possible. Of course, it's the In the Blue Corner channel on YouTube. That's In the Blue Corner. Make sure you put that word at the start, because apparently there's another one called The Blue Corner, which is not us. So In the Blue Corner, and of course the show is Blue Sunday. And the reason for that is because we're essentially a show that's going to be concentrating on Carlton, the Carlton Football Club in the AFL through the AFL season. And of course, we've got the AFLW season starting very early in the new year, and we'll certainly concentrate on those things as they happen. But this is essentially the summer edition, where we talk about all of the other sports that are happening around the world, including cricket and golf and horse racing and soccer. And if there are other sports that you want us to talk about, please, again, let us know. But they're the four main ones that we'll be concentrating on to start with. And Steve, you wanted to bring up a particular topic in relation to AFL this week, even though it's been a fairly slow news week in AFL circles, you'd have to say.
Yeah, Vince, look, we've spoken about this one a couple of weeks ago, but interesting regarding the Adelaide Crows AFLW situation regarding the player that is now put on the indefinite list or inactive list, and the situation.
Her name is Denny Van Hagen, and she's
that's right,
dual premiership player for the Adelaide Crows.
Absolutely. So we're not talking about a fringe player here. This is one of the sort of members of the leadership group, if you like.
Yep.
This is the first real test case of this going through. But she's been placed. She's an active supporter of pro-choice vaccine. And obviously we're looking to see how this unfolds.
Yeah.
I don't know what the ramifications are, whether the player will then be eventually delisted if they continue to, dig their heels in and not get vaccinated. This is going to be probably a test case for us to watch and see, because obviously this will then potentially prelude into the men's game, where will this occur with we don't know of it at the moment, but will this occur with any AFL? What's it? AFLM? Oh, who knows what you're supposed to call it these days? But any of the AFL men's team players, right? Yeah.
Yep.
So.
Yep. No, well, it'll be a very interesting test case, because can you imagine if someone like Dustin Martin or Ollie Wines or dare I say Sam Walsh said, "No, I'm not interested in getting vaccinated"? What would they do?
Great question, and this is the point, right? I'm not saying. I mean, AFLW is only a growing sport at the moment in its infancy, but this player would be equivalent of maybe not a Dustin Martin in the women's game, but certainly a decent player nonetheless. So the contracts for AFLW are what, $20,000 a year, thereabouts. They're doing it for love, not money. Let's be honest. So they can potentially afford to dig their heels in. But in the men's game, obviously, you got a lot bigger money, and it's a full-time career opposed to a part-time one at the moment in the women's game.
Yep.
Who knows where this is going to go? Oh, for me though, what I don't understand, and this is the big thing, what I don't understand is, what are they going to do when she's on the inactive list? Are they're going to counsel her, encourage her to continue to persuade her to get vaccinated? What do you do? It's either a yes or a no, isn't it? And do they get paid during that period? How does the club deal with it all? How does the AFL deal with it all? If it continues to be a standoff, is that it? Her career's over? What happens? And then, of course, will she be able to play at a local level? as well. So there's all these questions and permutations, and as I said, there's all the potential scenarios that could occur in the men's game. So it's a watch and see. It's a test case, but it's certainly going to be quite an interesting set of circumstances to play out.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, either of you gentlemen, but I think this AFLW player happens to be a nurse. Is that right? Is she involved in the health or medical industry there?
She was actively protesting in the Adelaide CBD for pro-choice for vaccine. So yeah, she's a nurse. Yep. So that'll obviously impact her full-time job as well.
Yes. Isn't it amazing, the whole pro-choice movement? I wonder if people were pro-choice in another particular subject, whether they're also pro-choice when it comes to vaccination. Be an interesting discussion. But I won't get into the politics of that. What do you think, Beachy, of this particular issue? Do you think players ought to just toe the line and be vaccinated whether they like it or not, and be forced to vaccinate before they can play? Or do you think they should be allowed to play vaccinated or not?
Well, first of all, Vince, let me say this. One way or another, however long we're around for, all of us, this is probably going to be a very heatedly debated topic for a number of years to come. Even when I'm not around anymore, I reckon there still will be people debating this topic, because there might be the next pandemic that might hit. Touch wood, we don't get it. Now, I've been pro-vaccination for this to protect most people, but I think, like most vaccines now, you've got to make a choice. If you say yes, if you're gonna do it, then great. If not, then that's your choice to bear, I think. Yeah. And if that affects you and other people around you, then unfortunately, that's the risks you're going to have to take.
Steve?
Well,
your view?
My view is what will happen now is that players playing in the junior leagues, they will know, I have to be vaccinated to play this sport. It'll be pretty obvious to them from the very start. So it'll probably be easier rather than harder in the future, because the players will already know that to play this sport, I have to qualify, I need to be vaccinated. At the moment, because this is all very new, players are being caught in the middle of all of this and have to essentially choose one way or another during their career. Look,
do you think that that's right, that they should be forced to vaccinate in order to play sport, even at the junior levels?
I believe that there be some measures, if you're not vaccinated, such as possible PCR testing or other sorts of testing, if they want, for people that choose not to be vaccinated, if that's the case, some form of something. I don't have the answer for that, obviously, now, but there would be something, but I don't believe it should be compulsory.
Let me pose this hypothetical question, gentlemen. You have a son. Let's just say you've got a son and he's 17 years of age, and he's being told to inject himself with something that he doesn't know about. Let's just say he gets drafted at the Essendon Football Club. All right? And he gets told that as part of this program, and if he wants to play at Essendon, they've got a program and they all have to take part in it. And they have to if they want to play football. How would you feel about that?
Well,
because isn't that what happened about 9 or 10 years ago at Essendon?
It's coming up to 10 years now at Essendon.
Yeah. Weren't they all told that they were going to be they're going to be injected with substances as part of this? What sort of program did they call it at the time? High performance program. Yeah.
I think the difference here. The difference here is
people are outraged about that, and at the same time now they're saying, no, you should be vaccinated before you play AFL football.
Yeah, look, but the difference here is, I think, Vincent, I'll disagree with you a little bit on this one. They've had, at least there's been some form of testing, albeit very, the testing and approval for all the medical associations have been, done on, with probably months rather than many years of trials.
Yeah.
Essendon situation, though, what was being allegedly injected into them was not approved, not known, and potentially harmful. However, this situation has been at least studies, trials, whatever. Whether you call them sufficient enough, that's another story. But at least that's occurred.
Well, I think most people still recognise that it's purely an experimental vaccine. And most vaccines that come onto the market have had years upon years of trialling, testing for long-term side effects and all sorts of things. Now, this has been produced in record time, sold by the pharmaceutical companies all around the world, and every single government has had to indemnify those companies against any legal action taken against them by people who have had either adverse reactions or have even suffered death as a result of taking the vaccine, and therefore their families try to sue the company. So they're not wanting to take responsibility for the product that they're injecting into us. And yet the government indemnifies them, but then forces you to take it. Is that right?
The government.
Am I misrepresenting anything? Please correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, I think we're getting into the whole debate on vaccines rather than look, without going down a rabbit hole.
Isn't this another example with AFL football? Just yet another workplace situation. It's no different to any other workplace that forces its employees to be injected and vaccinated.
Oh, no doubt, it's just this workplace. Absolutely, yeah. And this happens to be the sport that we love and follow, though. So that's why we're watching on closely on how this plays out. Will there be other stars lost to it? Will there be other situations where people feel so strongly that I don't know, it might get to a point where the money may. It depends. It's easy to be a philosopher on a full stomach, as they say, right? So if you've got a big, if your career is nearly finished and you've got plenty of money behind you, and you've made it in football, do you need to take the vaccine, or are you happy just to retire? Opposed to a young player who needs that career.
There's the counter argument. Yeah. There's the counter argument that the player that's on big money probably would take the vaccine because they really do want the money, as opposed to an AFLW player who's on, as you said, $20,000, $30,000 a year, who might say, well, no, I'm not going to play, and I'll make up the 20 or 30,000 by getting another job somewhere. Whereas it's pretty hard for an AFL player who's on 500, 600, 700,000 to go and get another job for that sort of money. I mean, the Prime Minister's on that sort of money. Yeah,
480, I think the Prime Minister's on, but we're not talking about
marginally more than the Victorian Premier. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just lost my phone.
Yeah.
No, you're right.
Look, it's going to be an interesting one. Let's just see where this goes and plays out. It's certainly going to be watch this space, though. This will be a test case for the men as well. So yeah.
I reckon it's only a matter of time before one of the men also stands out because they don't want to be vaccinated either.
That's exactly what I'm trying to say. What will happen then, and how will that be managed, and will it be consistent with the? What's the point on being on an inactive list? Do you have a period of time where you're sort of still attached to the club, and if they can persuade you to get vaccinated, then you come back all of a sudden, or when does the cutoff occur where that's it?
Yes. Well, let's just hope that common sense prevails and that the segregation within the Australian community, and specifically the Victorian community, comes to an end, because we've essentially become the apartheid state of Australia, separating vaccinated from unvaccinated people when it comes to even just getting into a basic cafe. Anyway, enough of that. If anyone else would like to contribute to the discussion, send us a comment or fire in a question on our comments page. By all means, do that. Otherwise, we'll move on. Hey, now, Steve, there was another interesting bit of news in AFL circles this week, with especially at board level. At a few different clubs.
Yeah, it's all happening. We're in the how we talk about the financial world. We're in the reporting season where the major companies disclose their operating profits or dividends and so forth for the previous financial years. Well, we're in the reporting, starting in most football clubs. The financial year obviously ends at the end of October.
Yeah,
and you're getting into the reporting season. Shall we say, traditionally, football clubs would have their reports and books audited and ready to be viewed by the members with an AGM occurring by Christmas time to close out the year. Unless it's
Carlton.
No, I threw you some bait. There. No, Carlton likes, a few clubs like to leave it as close to the pre-season as possible. Push it close to March if you can.
I wonder why, Steve.
Yeah, well, allegedly it gives them more time to audit their own books and prepare their financial statements and so forth. But anyway, three clubs have got a bit of board rumblings.
Boardroom rumblings happening, yeah.
Yeah. So Collingwood have got 11 potential candidates for board positions with 4 spaces available. So
11 doesn't quite go into 4, does it?
Not where I went to school. It doesn't. No. So essentially, that's going to be fun and games because there's a fair few high-profile people.
How many of the existing board are going up for those 4 positions? Have all of them reapplied to be re-elected?
Christine Holgate, I believe, has. Who else have you got? So Mark Corder, no. I believe I believe, Vincent, correct me, I'm not completely familiar with the whole Collingwood situation. I believe he's going to be retiring off the board there.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yep. So I think it will be at the AGM. So I think there may be 8 or 9 ordinary members that have put their hat in the ring. Now, what I wanted to say about this point is, firstly, this is going to be a complete breath of fresh air for the Collingwood board and an opportunity for the members to actually have their say and look at a whole diverse cross-section of people putting their hat in the ring. Back almost like it would be potentially when it was the old days before the closed shop of this sort of Andrew Demetrio era of boards, of AFL influence into club boards. Yeah. Now, without going down memory lane too much, probably pre-2000, the AFL have, in my view, Vince, you can correct me, Chris, probably not old enough to be able to correct me, but AFL didn't have as much influence in football clubs as it does now, regarding almost wink, wink, nudge, nudge. These are the types of people cut of a certain cloth that should be on a football club board, even though they have really essentially no direct influence. They do influence the outcomes, and they do encourage the club to have the type of people that they want on their boards, on the club boards. You didn't have nominations committees or these sorts of things in those days either. You had lots of diverse cross-section of people on boards. Good or bad, could you potentially have too many accountants, too many lawyers, too many one type of person? Maybe, but you generally had more of a cross-section of representation of members in general. You also had smaller club memberships back then as well. This gives the Collingwood members a huge smorgasbord of choice for people that could be on their board. Yep. And unless there's some really good marketing going on by the current board members that are on there to try and put in some, good PR articles that always drop just before, election papers go out to members and so forth. It's going to be a real big change. It really is. And speaking of PR stories, Vince, the St Kilda situation was also an interesting one. I think they copied the Carlton model here, where they announced a $3 million reduction in debt just before their AGM comes up as well, because St Kilda just recently announced a $3 million reduction in their debt to now it's under $10 million. So potentially that's a pretty big. I think they were at about 12 million previously, so that's a pretty big announcement there. Coinciding with obviously some challenges at board level there, where Grant Thomas and Jerry Ryan, we all know Jerry Ryan from Jayco, and
former part owner of Americane, the Melbourne Cup winning horse.
That's right, absolutely.
2010.
Yep. So essentially,
Mitchelton Winery up at Nagambie, amongst
absolutely, lovely spot. So he essentially is pushing for some change at St Kilda as well, and St Kilda is saying that it hasn't taken their eye off the ball for trying to arrest that drought, and there'll be no excuses next year. Every club says that, though, no excuses next year, and then the next year comes and they have excuses, and they say the next year won't have excuses again. Anyway, that's an interesting. I'll give you another bit.
Any Carlton supporters out there? Does that sound familiar?
If you could just put in the time capsule bottle some of the articles and sayings that are said every year, it'd just be rinse and repeat, wouldn't it? Anyway.
Cut and paste.
Places and names change, but situations stay the same, as they say. Anyway, that's that situation. And then you've got Hawthorn, where you've got a couple of board members, potentially a couple of influential members challenging there, and Jeff Kennett announcing that they're in great shape. The club's never been in better shape. He loves his governance, loves talking about governance. That's all he talks about. And he's potentially going to end his second stint at presidency prior to 2023. And they're looking for a successor there to groom for that role, the board up. So, interesting times at the football clubs.
Are you sure it's not the captain departing the Titanic before it hits the iceberg? I'm glad I've tickled Chris Beach's fancy there with that one.
Well, look, I think there are some problems that, I don't know. Again, we're focusing on Carlton here, but there are some problems at Hawthorn, a little bit from a football department perspective. However, COVID wasn't too kind to them. Their move to Dingley had to be delayed. They had all of that set up for their new facilities at Dingley. That had to be delayed. They did take a bit of a hit there. Obviously, their reliance on gaming potentially is an issue as well. And we know a football club that has the same reliance on gaming as well as a business model.
I'll tell you one thing though, Steve, and I'll be interested in your views on this, Beachy. How does a club justify bringing to an end 1 year prematurely 1 year before the end of his contract, a 4-time premiership coach, where they have to pay out $900,000 next year to Alistair Clarkson in order to take a year off? I mean, is there anybody else in Australia getting paid $900,000 for doing nothing?
And that's soft cap, right?
Apart from a few select politicians I can think of.
Well, the less said about that, the better. Before we go on there, guys, we've just got a comment here. Lana,
Sure.
Good evening. Glad
Hi,
to see
Lana.
you coming
Nice
to
to see
the
you.
chat here. We'll be keeping an eye on the comments again throughout the evening. Keep them coming, guys. We'll try and answer them as quickly and as swiftly as we can. Anyway, back to the point.
Yep.
So the point, 900 grand's in the soft cap, Vince, right? It had to be. So that's a fair dint to your football operational department spend,
I
right?
know they were keen on Sam Mitchell starting, next year and all that, but surely for the sake of 900, you'd let Alistair Clarkson continue if you're going to pay him that much money and just get Mitchell to learn off him for another year and then start the following year. But for some reason, they can justify making all of this change. And Clarkson, they may have expected to just leave gracefully, but obviously he said, "Well, I'm ready to coach. I'm ready to serve out my contract. If you don't want me to, well, then pay me out and see you later. I'll be out of here."
If you're talking
that's what had to happen.
If you're talking about governance, this should have been known well
That's
before.
my point. That is my point. The reason I bring this up is because what you said about Jeff Kennett and the whole issue of governance. Well, how can you possibly call that good governance?
No, because Mitchell was at West Coast. He went to do his coaching apprenticeship at West Coast, if you remember. I think it was 2018, the year after he retired, I believe. Don't quote me, but around that time. They would have already known through having him as a senior leader at their football club of his capabilities. Essentially, he's a playing coach almost at the time, right, when he was on the field. Now, they would have known his desire to coach. Mm-hmm. So they should have had all this planned. I know it never ends well when you've got a coach of four-time premiership coach there, but that it essentially just was a catastrophe, and it wasn't planned at all. It was it couldn't have had a worse outcome, and that's what boards are designed, boards are supposed to do is manage this sort of thing strategically.
Well, Beachy, you're up there on the main screen. Oh, no, you're not. I was going to get your views on it.
That's all good. So I was trying to get Steve on while we were still talking. Anyway, my view on this, well, Vince, I'm going to say this. It just comes down to democratic rights. Something that you've been big on for the last 3 months. Yep. Maybe even longer. It just comes down to democratic rights, because once Kenneth decides to eventually pack it in, who, by the way, had very, very turbulent history with Alistair Clarkson, I might add. And then you've got Collingwood's trying to sort out their potential rubbish as to what's been going on over there. And then St Kilda, well, does anybody know what's actually going on at St Kilda? Because if St Kilda don't turn things around, they could do what we did to Brett Ratten when he was the coach of us. And that is burn him as badly as we did.
What's your view on St Kilda, Steve?
Yeah, well, St Kilda have embarked on a very risky recruiting strategy. I think St Kilda, it's a tough job going into St Kilda for Matt Finnis, if you think about it, right? Essentially, he's got all the debt that he's inherited, COVID situation with limited resources, obviously limited earning capacity as well for football clubs. So basically, break-even situation is not a bad result. But then the recruiting strategy of looking at all these players, all these older players, it's proven not to have worked last year. Is last year just a blip on the radar, and potentially will they have a snapback? I don't want to use these terms, but I'm starting to use them like everybody else now. Will they have a snapback and continue their trajectory after making finals? Look, it's not sustainable to have that type of age demographic on their list, and I think they're in a fair bit of trouble. So that risk that they've taken with their list is not paying off, and I think that's the major problem. And the board would have had to sort of sign off on that strategically as well, and believe that was the right way to go. And last year it certainly wasn't.
Well, I'd be very interested to see how St Kilda, in 2 COVID years in succession, where there have been very few crowds, very little in gate takings, and I would imagine sponsorship would be pretty hard during those 2 years. How do they manage to make a $3 million dent into their debt?
Look,
have they made $3 million in profit? Because if they haven't made $3 million in profit, how do they get the additional funds to pay debt?
So they would have. So on the back of last year, they would have had a higher membership. albeit a lot of those fans couldn't attend as many games. So there were compensation situations that some clubs entertain their members with. Potentially a rise in membership of maybe 10,000 members, maybe 10 or 15,000. Would that be enough for $3 million? This year, the grounds actually paid clubs when they didn't have crowds. They had some agreements that the MCG and Marvel Stadium entered into. So I think that was there. But $3 million is a lot of money. I can't see how I can't see how they've made that sort of a profit. But let's be honest, without casting aspersions, there's lots of creative accountancy that can go on and how things can be itemised as, assets and it's part of the profit and all the rest of it.
Do you know of any other clubs in the AFL?
You get to see clubs' books properly.
Do you know of any other clubs in the AFL that have claimed to have made extraordinary amounts of, money in the order of $6 or $7 million to pay back all of the historical debt by a chance?
Now you're throwing me bait. Absolutely.
How does that happen when you've got 80% less revenue and
what happens is you get government
gate takings and all the rest of it? How do you all of a sudden wipe out all of your debt for the last 26 years?
You get
the last 2 years.
You get government grants and you classify them as actual operating income.
Oh,
now,
really?
The definition in accounting in accounting world is the definition of income is earnings via ordinary business activity.
Yeah.
Now, a government grant is a one-off earning. So anyway, Vince, let's not go down that track.
Yeah, but Steve, call it what you want. If a government grant comes in, it's for a purpose.
But it's
meant to be used for a specific purpose, such as, for example, building a brand new grandstand or a brand new facility. It's not meant to be used to pay back all of your other debts.
Well, what will happen though is when the music stops, essentially, that when they have to build that stand and actually fully pay it out, guess what?
They're $7 million short.
It's all on the never, isn't it? Because eventually,
but that money will have to be raised somehow.
Yeah, but let's let future boards and presidents worry about that, right?
No, but hang on a second. Don't you think that the state government, let's just say it's state government money, or it could be federal government money, doesn't matter, either one, would want to know that the funds that have been sent to the club have been properly allocated and only used to pay for the things that they were originally granted for?
Well, I would have thought, and you're right, I would have thought that's the case, but the club can obviously say that when the time comes to pay the tradesmen, to pay the construction companies and so forth, that money's there and they'll just go into a bit more overdraft again. I would have thought.
Geez, I wonder what would happen if all of a sudden they just were a few $1 million short. What would they say then if the state government wanted to know what happened to the money that they gave us?
You've always got the overdraft to go back to, so you just go yo-yoing in and out of.
I'm sure Martin Pakula will fix it all up. He's a good Carlton supporter. Anyway,
don't stop me.
Anyway, can we move on? Because we've already gone for 40 minutes and we haven't even spoken about any of the other sports that are going on in the world at the moment.
No, exactly.
So
I think
why don't we give Beachy a bit of a heads up? You and I will shut up for a little bit. And Chris, tell us what's going on in the world of cricket.
Thanks, Vince. So we've still got the World T20 World Cup still going.
Yes.
And last couple of nights, we had Australia play the West Indies, which was a very critical game for the Aussies to win, because if they won that, we're straight into the semis, and that's exactly what happened. We beat the West Indies, and we managed to qualify for second. Barring some crazy disaster which would have had to rely on other things going that way, which did happen, but net run rate was more of the way to.
So what we saw in our division was England, ourselves, and South Africa all finished on the same amount of points, but separated on net run rate. And fortunately for us, we were one of the top two teams, in fact, second place behind England on net run rate. South Africa missed out; their net run rate wasn't good enough, and obviously the other three teams in the division all missed out, being Sri Lanka and West Indies and Bangladesh. Yep.
So I got the net run rates written down here. So England finished on a net run rate of 2.4. There were other numbers there, but I'm only using the first two numbers here.
Yep.
And we finished on 1.2, and the South Africans finished on 0.73. Now that, you see, if South Africa had won by a bigger margin, they would have then overtaken us. But they only won by 10 runs against England, which as a result meant that we were the ones qualifying into the semi-finals.
Yep.
Now, in the other group, there are other games to be played still, and most of them, I believe, are being played tonight, starting with New Zealand versus Afghanistan. Now, pretty much, if New Zealand win tonight, it is good night for the rest of them, because New Zealand win, they pretty much qualify, and
together with the unbeaten Pakistan, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Yeah.
And it's funny you mentioned Pakistan, because they're playing Scotland in their last game, and you would think that the Scots are not going to get close to them. However, a side with nothing to lose is usually pretty dangerous. So we will wait and see on that. And in the last game that's potentially to take place is India versus Namibia. Now that result you would think is going to write itself, but they're going to have to rely on Afghanistan doing something to New Zealand, in which case that is beating them by enough. Because India have the net run rate to take over that spot. So what else have we got here? Yes, the Sheffield Shield took place quickly, and that's still in progress as we speak at the MCG. It is stumps on day 3 between Victoria and the New South Wales Blues. New South Wales are in their second innings, 3 for 61 after there was an early start due to the rain that happened late in the day yesterday. So, to give you a bit of context as well, Victoria declared at 5 for 248. Maddinson and Hanscom both got to 90. Shorten and Hanscom got to 90, and that got us to a lead of about 422. As a result, with New South Wales 3 for 61, they are 367 runs behind with the final day to go.
You'd think that the Victorians would wrap that one up pretty well tomorrow, with only 7 wickets required, and obviously New South Wales requiring a lot of runs to win, so it wouldn't be likely that they'd do that. But their only hope would... Sorry?
That'll be the double, Vince. It'll be the home and away result to Victoria, essentially. That's a very sweet
yes, indeed.
result. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, no, I think Victoria will end up winning that Sheffield Shield match for sure.
Yes, exactly. And as Steve has said, doing the double before the Marsh One Day Cup game against them on the 12th of November will be very sweet, considering the history that we have had with New South Wales in general. Now, I'll just quickly go on to the ladder at this point, because the ladders are a bit different to each other. Queensland sits on top at the moment, and they will be playing their next game quite soon, actually. That'll be on about the 10th. It's quite soon. I have to double check the fixture for that. But while I get that, WA sit second, Tasmania sit third, Victoria sit fourth after their first win against New South Wales at Drummoyne Oval. South Australia sit fifth, and New South Wales at the moment sit last. So there's still a lot of games to go in that tournament.
Well, Victoria and New South Wales have effectively only played their first match, whereas other states have played 3 games each and thereabouts.
3 games each, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So the Victorians have got off to a good start. It's their first Sheffield Shield game for the season, and looks like they're going to have an outright win. All right, what else is happening in the world of cricket? We've got the women's T20 competition.
Yes, we do. So there were 3 games today, guys. And that was, I'll go with the game that just finished. Perth Scorchers defeated the Hobart Hurricanes, but not by as much as many people would have thought. The final scores there were the Hobart Hurricanes, who batted first, 96 all out. The Hobart Hurricanes actually did some pretty decent inroads. They got the Scorchers 5 down before the Scorchers passed them with 4.3 overs to go. So that actually turned to a decent game in the end. That game took place at the old Wacker ground in Perth.
Yes, the good old Wacker, right opposite Gloucester Park, the home of harness racing in Perth. What a great couple of venues they are, right in the heart of the city.
And there was a double header at the Adelaide Oval today, which I must admit is probably one of the best grounds to go to.
Absolutely,
or
no question.
Cricket itself, with the old scoreboard and the hills there.
Short boundaries and square leg as well.
Yes.
It's all about the old scoreboard at the Adelaide Oval. Believe me, that's the real attraction of going to that ground.
Yes, and as someone that went there in 2019, Vince, I can definitely vouch for that when I Port Adelaide there.
Very good.
So what happened there? So sorry, Vince, we'll go quickly just over the results. Brisbane Heat defeated the Sydney Thunder women by 5 wickets, 5 for 174 off 18.2, and the Thunder made 7 for 143. And the battle for Melbourne in the game in the afternoon at the Adelaide Oval, the Melbourne Stars 103 to the Renegades 3 for 104.
So the Renegades beat the Stars again.
Yep.
And they're pretty much on top of the ladder, aren't they? The Renegades in the women's competition?
They are. So it is a top, as far as I'm aware, it is a top 4 competition. Renegades
very good.
Top on 15 points with a net run rate of 0.32. Right. Brisbane Heat, who are sitting second at the moment, but they have a better net run rate of 0.43. Perth Scorchers are in third at the moment, 0.31, and the Sydney Sixers, who are in fourth, on 0.18. That is how it stands in the WBBL at the moment.
Sounds good. And, of course, the Ashes starts in December. What is the date of that again?
So that will start on the 8th of December at the Micey Fortress that is known as the Gabba. So there will be plenty of Queenslanders wanting to get out to that, considering what's been happening lately.
So, Chris, this time next week, will we have a champion of the T20 World Cup? Will we know that by then?
Yes, we will, I believe, Vince, because the final for that will be taking place on the 15th of November.
That's on Monday. So we'll actually, by the time we do our show, we won't know who's the final. We won't have a winner yet. No. So what we will know is who won the semi-final. So who are the two teams playing off in the first semi-final, and who are the 2 teams in the second semi-final?
They haven't quite nailed that down just yet, Vince, because
we're still waiting on those last 2 games in New Zealand. Okay, yes. So let's just assume that Pakistan wins and New Zealand wins, and they qualify because they're the most likely results. Will that mean that Australia plays, being the second qualifying team in Group 1, will they play the top-rated team of the? So they'll be playing Pakistan. Is that how it works?
I would believe that to be the case.
And therefore, England would play New Zealand.
New Zealand.
Right. That'll be
That's if
interesting.
everything goes according to plan.
Mm.
But if Afghanistan somehow managed to knock off New Zealand,
So if New Zealand happens to lose tonight, well, then that leaves potentially either Afghanistan or maybe even India a chance to qualify.
yes, because
Right. Come on, Kiwis, get out there and do it for us.
yes, exactly.
All right, now we
And
know that Steve's pressed for time tonight. He might have to leave us in about 10 minutes. So we'll discuss golf quickly with you, Steve. Thanks for that report on cricket, Beachy.
no problem, boys.
Now, of course, during the week, as people to our Facebook page will have seen, where we highlighted a fantastic victory last weekend by a young 25-year-old Australian. And Steve, why don't you tell us all about it?
Yeah, Lucas Herbert, Bendigo-born product, Carlton Recruiting Zone, actually. Could we claim some of that, Vince? I don't know, but
if he can play football, we'll draft him in the pre-season draft.
Absolutely. Well, it was a bit like football weather out there at Bermuda, to be honest. The actual weather was very blustery, very challenging conditions. Lucas Herbert broke through for his first tour win. Essentially, a couple of long putts on the back nine were the major highlights of a pretty dour day of golf. It was really, he said he enjoyed the struggle, and that's a mindset thing for golfers. Essentially, you need to, if you walk out there and you know the conditions are. You acknowledge the conditions are difficult,
blustery, cold, windy, raining.
You've got to
say,
actually.
Oh my God! How am I supposed to win with conditions like this?
Absolutely, you've got to embrace that.
Or you can focus and say, "I'm going to love this."
Well, this is it. You've got to accept it and then play with it, and then go, okay, what part of my strengths of my game can I use to navigate through these conditions, rather than, I only like playing on a dry deck, so to speak. So he held a long eagle putt and also a long birdie putt on the back nine, and that really sort of was the main turning point for him.
My word.
Taylor Pendrith, the long-hitting Canadian rookie who had the overnight lead, unfortunately capitulated with a double bogey on the second last hole to put him completely out of it. Nonetheless,
he had a pretty disastrous final round, didn't he?
He did.
5 over 76.
That's right. He had a 61 in his third round. So essentially, and that happens a lot.
Every day is different, isn't it? Every day.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a very different sport. So, what does this mean now for Lucas Herbert? Essentially, he's got an exemption on the US PGA Tour for 2 years. And so what that really means is he can say, I'm going to have on my schedule, I'm going to play 4 weeks here. I'm going to have 3 weeks break. I'll then go back to Australia for Christmas or do whatever I want to do. If he can do that, or for a holiday at some point.
He doesn't have to qualify for every tournament every time.
So if you're a rookie on the tour, you'll have exemptions into the smaller tournaments, and then essentially the larger ones you won't get starts in.
Yep.
He can now pick his whole schedule and play in the best ones, the ones which of course also have a greater prize purse, and the US Masters as well, something to look forward to. So it's a big.
Sorry, go on.
I was going to say it's a big start for him because to keep your card as a rookie is pretty difficult because you're playing in those smaller tournaments, and it's the first time you're seeing a lot of these golf courses. Now he can really relax and just have that not playing with pressure, and also not obviously concerned about his financial situation. Yeah,
well, I think $1.5 million for winning the Bermuda Championship last weekend would have been a nice injection of funds into his bank account. That's for sure.
Absolutely.
What he should have done was made himself a national of the country of Bermuda, so that he didn't have to pay tax on it. being an Australian, he'll probably have to pay about 49 cents in the dollar on most of that. But anyway,
those taxes help your infrastructure and everything, don't they? And all of ours. So let's say that as a positive.
Yes, indeed. Anyway, good on Lucas Herbert. I think it was a tremendous victory, and let's hope we see him win another tournament on the PGA circuit over there in the USA very soon. I know he's already won a couple of tournaments in Europe before this one, so this one will give him a real leg up in the US.
But he won in Dubai. Yep. So that was another one.
Yep.
The other interesting, really quickly, the other interesting one is, I'm not sure if any of you saw it, but the ladies' event in Dubai where they're playing under lights. It was a twilight event.
Yes.
Beachy talking about his Big Bash cricket and all of that, it just sort of prompted me to think about that under lights concept and whether that would potentially work in Australia to add a bit more novelty to the sport. Potentially a live evening type of format where you could get golf streamed into people's lounge rooms in the evening opposed to during the day. I don't know. Anyway, just something I'm throwing out there, but that was interesting to see that tournament.
Who would have thought we'd be talking about playing golf under lights when the game evolved back in Scotland all those years ago?
That's a great question. That's a great thing, Vince. And some might say you might play some match play under lights. As one of the newer innovations potentially.
Well, I mean, until the late 70s, cricket was only ever played during the day, and along came a guy called Kerry Packer and decided that he'd try this game under lights, and look what's happened since. So,
well, it is cooler over there in the evening as well. So the under lights golf courses obviously have more of a market.
Yes.
Then you'd want to be playing in the sandpit. During the middle of the day.
Yeah, with 58 degrees as a top temperature at 11 o'clock in the morning. Well, anyway, yes, it'll all be very interesting. I mean, Steve, it actually beggars belief that it was the first final of 1993 between Carlton and Essendon, the qualifying final, if you remember that one, we won by 2 points. That was the very first final played under lights.
I remember at the MCG. I remember that. Yes, very well.
Next year it'll be the 30th anniversary of that, and I reckon it's not far. It won't be long before the grand final is always played at night.
Yeah, we got ahead of ourselves that day. I thought we were going to win that premiership anyway. Let's
let's not relive 1993 too quickly. All right,
exactly.
Let's move on to one of your other loves, which is the game of soccer, the round ball, the one that everyone else calls football. EPL, the English Premier League, is starting to really hot up. What's happening so far this weekend?
Major talking points on that. Obviously, the Manchester derby.
Yes.
Manchester City 2. Manchester United 0, Manchester City 2. So.
At Old Trafford, that wouldn't have gone down too well with the Manchester United fans.
It could have been 10. Let's be honest.
Really?
It was. They dominated. It was really. It was.
How long can the manager last while they're performing like that?
Look, I think if it was, I don't know, but I feel if it was 5 or 6 that it could have been, he maybe potentially could have had his marching orders that evening. But the team kept it to 2.
Didn't they concede 5 goals recently to
Liverpool?
To Liverpool,
yes.
And
that's right.
As well.
And the form line's been. They've only beat Spurs. They beat Spurs 3-0 away from home, but who doesn't beat Spurs these days at the moment? They're having a terrible run of form. So, speaking of managers...
The manager is being spoken about like he's a guy that all the players love, but they're not performing very well under. Is he the David Teague of the English Premier League?
It's right out of my mouth, Vince.
Chris, I didn't mean to do that.
No, not at all.
What I mean by that is, the players love him, but they don't seem to be, performing when it counts the most.
He's a club legend, right? So essentially, that's why.
And we're talking about the one and only
Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. Yes.
Yes, the man who kicked a few Champions League goals and won them a Champions League
You,
essentially.
you want an interesting situation for a manager. Norwich had their first win for the year, and against Brentford
Yes.
of
Yes.
all teams,
Well,
and their managers received his marching orders.
Oh,
Yeah.
no way.
Yep. So,
Oh, my God.
so yeah, that is weird. That's very weird. But that was a 2-1 victory away from home at Brentford Stadium. In other games, Southampton continued to pour more misery on Villa, who are having a terrible year at the moment. And look, who knows what's going to happen there? But they're suddenly in a relegation battle. And Chelsea at home had a draw with Burnley, a team that they would have been very fancied to at least put 3 or 4 goals past. So yeah,
Especially
very yeah, absolutely, and that's the thing, right? Essentially, that's now moved them closer to the pack in the table, and given other teams behind them a bit of a chance of getting up to the top of the table in the coming weeks. Should Chelsea slip again?
sorry about
Yes,
dropping out there, Steve. My I don't know, my feed just cuts out after an hour. I've done most of these shows, so I'm not sure why. But anyway, I'm back. Interesting results in the Premier League, but of course, my team and Beachy's team are playing at about 1 o'clock in the morning against Tottenham Hotspur. Everton, what's happened? Chris, we've lost our last 3 games. What's going on?
That is a great question, Vince. And as much as I'd love to give you an answer, I'm not entirely sure myself. Because, we've got Rafa Benitez at the helm, and you would have
Who
thought
used to be the manager of Liverpool a few years ago, and a very successful one at that.
And it's ironic, isn't it? We've got one of them at the helm with us. But here's the thing.
It's not quite working out. Oil and water don't always mix, do they?
But here's the thing. Tottenham have just got rid of their manager not too long ago. And guess who they brought in to replace him? A former Chelsea manager himself, who has been very successful wherever he has gone. And
Antonio Conte, the Italian master.
Yes.
Yes.
Owners might have to be a little bit careful with that. Hey.
Well, he took Chelsea to the promised land, didn't he? Only 4 or 5 years ago?
Pretty much. But Everton versus Tottenham is not the only game that's taking place. There are 4 other games taking place as well. Arsenal are at home to Watford at the Emirates.
They should win that.
And you've got Leeds United going to Elland Road. So they're playing at home to Leicester City.
That'll be a very competitive game, I would have thought.
And you've got just who we were talking about before in Liverpool on the road to the old Olympic Stadium to face the Hammers in West Ham United.
Who are playing brilliantly under a former Everton manager, David Moyes. Who's really, doing very well at West Ham. I'd love to see them knock Liverpool off. I'm not sure whether they will, but I reckon they'll have a big home crowd there to cheer them on, so why not?
That's a top 4. That's a top 4 battle, essentially. So that is probably the game of the night, with all due respect to my fellow Everton fans, but I think that will be the game of the night. Yeah.
The Everton-Tottenham game is more of an interest in who loses, because whoever loses is on Skid Row.
Absolutely.
Everton will be out of the top 10 if we lose.
Exactly right. We'll still be mid-table, but everyone else will be still trying to catch up to us. Something
along those lines. Yes, you're right. Now, we should also point out very quickly that the FA Cup first round is starting to take place. The Premier League teams don't really take part in that until the 3rd round, which will be normally early in the new year. The Champions League is still progressing. We had some games during the week. We won't go through that in great detail at the moment, but as it comes towards the end of the group stage, we'll talk a little bit about Champions League. Most of the favoured teams and most of the teams that you would expect to get through are looking pretty good. I don't think there's any major teams in trouble there, are there, Chris?
No, not at the moment. It's still reasonably early
Yeah.
through the tournament. They're only in the group stages still, as you say. And
Yeah.
for those that
Yeah.
that aren't exactly familiar with the Champions League group stages, they play each other twice. Once at their ground, and then once at home, depending on how they do it.
Yeah.
And then you're pretty much going to all over the legs of the throughout the knockout stages.
Yep. Well, quickly in the Italian Serie A competition, the ladder is Napoli and Milan, both on 31 points after 11 games. Napoli's ahead on goal difference, 20-15. That's pretty competitive over there in Italy. The French Ligue, or Ligue 1, as they call it. PSG, well, Paris Saint-Germain, absolutely dominating. After only 13 games, they've already got a 10-point lead over Lens on 24. So they look like they're going to be taking out that competition already with only about a third of it gone. The Spanish La Liga, there's always great interest in that. Real Madrid are on top at the moment with 27 points after 12 matches from Real Sociedad on 25. And my favourite team, Sevilla, on 24 with a game in hand. So they can actually head up towards the top of the table if they win their game tonight. Atletico Madrid next on 22. The real surprise is Barcelona, who, after losing a couple of very important players and their manager as well recently, they're only on 17 points in ninth position. So who would have expected that fall from grace this year?
A lot of pressure on them now. There is a lot of pressure on them now. So,
and the other competition that most people are interested in is the German Bundesliga, where the usual champions, Bayern Munich, are on top of the ladder on 28 points from Borussia Dortmund, who are on 24. So that's after 11 games. So they're the major soccer league competitions around the world. And we also wait for the start of the A-League season, gentlemen.
Yeah, less than 2 weeks to go.
Yeah, it's not that far away.
And
so we'll talk a little bit about A-League as it starts.
And with Steve and myself being hard Melbourne Victory supporters,
yes.
This is the season that we intend on looking forward to very much so, when we've got Western United as the first game away down at the Canterbury, as many people will call it. Kardinia Park.
Now, gentlemen, that probably wraps up our golf and soccer segments that Steve normally takes part in. But before we do go, Steve, I've just got to remind you, the Melbourne Cup was held during the week.
Yes.
Do you remember what the placings were for the top three? What were the numbers?
4-2. Four. I know 4 and 2.
Yeah.
What were the other? I'm just trying to think.
Come on, Chris. What about you? Do you remember them?
4, 2, and 3.
4, 2, 3. There you go,
my friend.
Yeah.
If anyone's in any doubt, just have a look at the In the Blue Corner page on Facebook, and when all of everyone's tips were put up there, just look up the ones that I had. Actually, I almost got fourth as well.
We are looking at a Nostradamus here in Gisana. This guy should
no. It doesn't happen that often, Chris. Let me tell
you. Vince, you'll have a 1-800 number where we can call and pay for your tips, right? and people will call in that hotline and get your tips. Right.
Well, I know more people that made money out of my tips than what I made money out of it. I can tell you, because all I did was put $10 each way on Very Elegant number 4, and it paid $16.50 and $4.50. $16.50 for the win, $4.50 for the place. So that wasn't a bad result for $10 each way investment. But some people took my trifecta and won $436.20 for every dollar that they put on it.
Are you expecting some form of a goodwill gesture thrown your way for the tip, or is it all
I wouldn't say expecting it. It'd be nice. It'd be nice, but I'm not expecting it, no. But look, what a great race it was. And I've got to say, even after yesterday's McKinnon Stakes, which was won by James McDonald as well, the same jockey that won on Very Elegant on Melbourne Cup Day, he won on a horse called Zaki in the McKinnon Stakes on Saturday. And if you looked at the colours of both Very Elegant on the jockey, the silks, they're red and blue. What a year it has been for the red and blue. I mean, Melbourne wins the premiership. Very Elegant wins the Melbourne Cup with the red and blue colours. And yesterday, if you have a look at the jockey's silks, he's even got the all blue with the red V. I mean, it looked like a Melbourne jumper. It looked like the closest thing to a Melbourne jumper a jockey has ever worn.
But what a great ride! He had a lap full of horse, and he just pressed the button, knowing that he had so much horse, and it just went zoom, didn't it? It was just a beautiful ride.
I must admit, I had my eyes on Very Elegant for the whole way in the Melbourne Cup, and I just thought he's getting a beautiful run here. The key to the victory, in my opinion, was right at the start, where he snagged the horse from barrier 18 right across towards the inside, as close to the inside as he could get. And he got himself a position one off the fence. And that was the key to it, because then he got a beautiful soft ride on the horse all the way through. And as they were approaching the home turn, I thought, my goodness, no one's going to go past her. It's a question of whether she can catch up to the others. But she loomed up on the turn, and I just thought, she's got this straight away. You could just see it. He had, as you said, a lap full of horse. And fantastic victory. And the same sort of thing happened yesterday in McKinnon Stakes with Zaki, the winner of that race. So fantastic result for James McDonald. What a spring carnival. He's had 10 winners. 10 winners for the carnival. It's huge. Yeah. And
first time ever.
And great to see Chris Waller, the trainer of Winx, getting his first Melbourne Cup as well with Very Elegant. Fantastic result.
Yes.
All right. Any other comments on the Spring Carnival, guys, before we finish? We should also mention, of course, that the Oaks was run and won on Thursday, of course. And do you remember who won that?
It was the favourite from memory.
Well, it was pretty close to favourite. Yeah, I would have thought so. Willowy, number 2, which was ridden by Damien Oliver in the all-blue colours of James Cummings.
At 49 years of age.
Not bad, is he, eh? He's not bad, Damien Oliver.
He keeps the weight off at that age.
I don't know how he does it. He's still going. I'll never forget as a young kid when he won his first Melbourne Cup on Doremus back in 1995.
That's right. That's a lot of saunas, a lot of the work that these jockeys put themselves in just to come up every day.
Oh, yeah.
All the training, the saunas, getting up early in the morning, just to keep that weight. It's amazing. What an effort, 49. It's a big commitment.
Yes, fantastic result. So that's pretty much it for the Thoroughbred Spring Carnival. I think we've got the Sandown Cup, is it, this coming Saturday? If I'm not mistaken. It's usually the Sandown one when it comes to the weekend after the Spring Carnival's over. I think it's pretty much Sandown next week. Should mention, of course, in the world of harness racing, on Oaks Day, we had the traditional Yarra Valley meeting over there at the Yarra Glen Racecourse, where the trotting track is inside the thoroughbred track, and they ran the Yarra Valley Pacing Cup and Trotters Cups on the day. And the Yarra Valley Pacing Cup was won by General Dodge, the even money favourite at $2 and $1.30. A masterful drive by young Jason Lee, who's a great Carlton supporter. And he beat Major Roll and Torrid Saint into third position. So General Dodge, you'll hear a lot more about that horse as the Country Cup season progresses through December and January. And the Yarra Valley Trotters Cup was also run and won by a very promising horse called Have Horse Will Travel. And that was trained by Andy Gath and driven by his wife, Kate Gath, at generous odds of $6.40 and $2.30, beating Robbie Royale, Chris Alford. Another great Carlton supporter, Chris Alford, and an absolute champion driver. And Brownlow Prince, Chris Finocio, in third position. So they were the main two races in harness racing during the week. There was also I should also mention last night, there was a meeting at Melton, which normally takes place, of course, on its home track of St Arnaud. But the St Arnaud meeting was transferred to Melton last night because crowds weren't allowed. Now, of course, they ended up being allowed last night, but they didn't change the meeting. So they had effectively the St Arnaud meeting at Melton last night. And they also had their Pacing Cup and Trotters Cup last night. Pacing Cup was won by the odds-on favourite, number one from the pole position, Our Millionaire, for Emma Stewart, the Emma Stewart stable, which is the number one stable in Victoria, driven by Jodie Quinlan brilliantly at $1.50 and $1.10. So not a great return on your investment, but all you can do is collect if you win.
Better than bank interest. Bank interest is
a short price winner than a long price loser. That's for sure.
You can't value, as they say.
That's right. And Our Millionaire defeated the horse drawn behind it, number 8, Ideal Some Magic, Greg Sugars at $1.80. And You Rock Skinny Jeans, Anthony Butt in third position. That was the St Arnaud Pacing Cup. And the Trotters Cup was won by the favourite as well. So if you follow the favourites in harness racing, you do get up a lot of winners, let me tell you.
I was going to say, Vince.
Aldebaran Test number 8, $2.80 and $1.40, driven by young Sophia Arvidsson, the Swedish girl who came to Australia to settle down. Defeating Easy Pickings, $2.50, and Kai Valley Finn, the pole marker number 1, $3.70 the place. So exciting carnival coming up soon. We've got the Interdominion starting on the 27th of November. So we're only a couple of weeks away from that, or say 3 weeks actually. But we'll preview that as it comes along, and in the meantime, we'll preview the other cup meetings that are coming up.
I was going to say, Vince, for that St Arnaud meeting, probably lucky it was moved because of the flooding that they had up there. Ironically, they would have probably maybe not been able to hold that meeting at St Arnaud itself.
Well, funnily enough, I actually attended the St Arnaud Pacing Cup meeting a couple of years ago with a friend of mine who was actually a race caller, and a very good one at that, young Luke Humphreys, who's not even 21 yet. But he took me to St Arnaud that day, and the actual track is around the circumference of a football ground.
Yes.
It's actually St Arnaud Football Club.
Mildura's the same. Mildura's the same. Yeah. They've got
Mildura. I went to Mildura recently too. That was fantastic. Yeah. Basically, the track is a harness track around the circumference of the football oval.
That's insane.
It works quite well. I don't know why more towns don't do that with their football ovals and create a harness racing venue and have a once a year or twice a year meeting.
A bit like Geelong West, Vince, in the VFA days with the cycling velodrome out around the.
You remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah, now we're showing our age, aren't we? Geelong West. God, how long was it since they were in the VFA, Steve? They would have to be
late 80s, I think.
I think they were basically, defunct by about 1981.
If you remember, the old Preston beat them in the grand final of 82 or 83, I think it was.
Was it?
Not sure, but they beat Geelong West in that grand final, that VFA grand final.
All I remember from the VFA days was the Dandy Dollar Dash at halftime. And the actor from the Sullivans, Norman Yem, used to win it all the time. Do you remember him? Anyway, you probably don't.
I'm a bit young for all this, hey?
I think you are way too young for this, Chris. Anyway, we better shut up about all that.
No, exactly. Steve, I believe you've got to go now, haven't you?
Yes, I've got other commitments, but thank you very much, everyone. It's been good to chat.
No problem, Steve. It's great to have you with us, and we look forward to having you regularly as we head towards Christmas.
No worries. Thanks.
All the best.
Dave. All right.
All right,
so,
Beachy, have we got any other friends of ours there waiting in the waiting room, or everyone pretty much done for the night?
Look, it's just you and me at the moment here,
No, that's fine.
Vince.
Yep.
Guys, sorry about the comments. I've been seeing your comments come in. I'll quickly go through them just so we get an idea of what's been said.
Yep.
Here's a question from Goz on the footy section. What about Michael Voss's son? What's the go with him in the rising ranks of the AFL? Now, Vince, you might be more abrupt on this than I am because I've heard nothing about him.
No, neither have I. I'll be honest with you, I don't. I don't know anything about what's happening with Michael Voss's son. I've heard more about Patrick Cripps' brother, but no, I haven't heard too much about Michael Voss's son. But look, if he's good enough, he'll be picked up by somebody. Not because his name is Voss, but because he was actually a good footballer.
No, exactly. And if Brisbane are looking to pick him up under the father's son, well, then by all means, that should be a bit of fun. Now, there was a question here from Lana. Do we have a starting date for the AFLW yet? Lana, I don't believe we do.
I think they're still talking about the first week in January, aren't they, though, Chris? Like the 6th or 7th of January, from memory?
From memory, I think it's about that. But this may also have to rely on what's been going on out in WA by a certain premier out there. But anyway, less said about that, the better, because otherwise we will be going on all night if we do that.
We'll certainly let you know, Lana, as soon as an official statement is received by the AFLW or provided by the AFLW, I should say.
No, exactly.
We'll certainly let everyone know the best we can.
We're certainly keeping an eye on things here as we move along.
Yep.
So Lana's another victory supporter. Great to know. She then asked you, how much did you bank from that bet?
Well, as I said, I outlaid $10 each way on the winner. So I outlaid $20 and got back, I think, was it $16.50 and $4.50? So I must have got back $210. Was that right?
That's not a bad collect.
So what's that? I made $190. I made $190 in profit. There you go. Certainly not enough to retire on.
No, not like everyone that flashes 50,000 on one thing at its current odds.
Very classy by James McDonald, hugging his boyhood hero Brett Preble, who came second on the other horse there on Saturday at the McKinnon Stakes. So that was a fantastic moment to see the two of them embracing like that. I think there should be more of that in all sorts of sports, I guess. But certainly good to see it in the way that was expressed on the weekend in the thoroughbred racing world. That was great. Good to see.
Yes, exactly. And as you say, it's something that should be taken a bit more seriously, I reckon, if people are doing that. I mean, I'd hate to go back into the past here for a little bit, but remember the time that Damien Oliver lost his brother?
Yes.
He rode in the Melbourne Cup.
2002 on Media Puzzle. Yep.
Yes, it was a big day for the Olivers, and he won it for his brother, which as a young 10-year-old at the time for me, was probably one of the biggest stories going on at the time.
Certainly was.
And then, you've got the other history sections as well, like Glenn Boss winning 3 in a row on Macquarie Deebar. A lot of things were going on there. So, we could go on all night as it goes, guys. That's for damn sure.
Yeah, well, you've seen a few fantastic Melbourne Cups in your young life, Chris, and hopefully you'll see a hell of a lot more. But it's been tough getting the overseas horses over here, and with all of the complications with COVID and everything, I think they can be pretty proud of what they've achieved this year with the Spring Racing Carnival. That's for sure.
Yes, exactly.
Just a shame we couldn't have a full crowd of 100,000 at Flemington instead of a reduced crowd of only 10. But anyway, let's not get into the politics again.
Great minds think alike, because regardless of the 10,000 strong crowd or not, it was just great to see some sort of a crowd back there to
absolutely
finish it all off.
Yep.
Now,
any other comments or questions? No.
No, I don't
Pretty
think
much
so. Unless I heard Lana say love Norman Yem. You know who? I think you know who he is.
Yes, well, if you ever watched the series back in the late 70s and early 80s in Australia called The Sullivans, which is about a family that, of which most of the members of that family, or the male members at least, went off to war. It was basically set in World War II. And Norman Yem, from memory, let me think. Well, he played a reasonably senior age guy that was a friend of the family, and they used to see him at the pub and all that sort of thing. So anyway, he often took part in these halftime sprints. They used to do basically almost like they do at Stall every year, where they do the Stall
gift,
the Stall gift and all that. But this was around the circumference of the ground, so it often had handicaps and people starting off 10 metres, 20 metres, 30 metres, etc. And Norman Yen often took part in these halftime races. Some were shorter distances than others. Some were longer distances. He generally took part in the longer distance ones, I think. And generally speaking, he came out on top. He was a fantastic runner. So anyway, for those of you who are old enough like me to remember the Sullivans and Norman Yem, that was a bit of a memory of the VFA days, where the secondary Victorian football competition used to take place every year. They were great days.
Yes, I'm sure they were. Now, I've just quickly got a comment or question here from Rob Galicchio. I think I've got that right.
Yeah, Galicchio,
he's asking about Will Sutherland in the game for the Vicks today and thoughts on his progress.
Okay.
Look, as far as I'm concerned, he's still...
From memory, he's the young, quite a burly, big guy with blonde hair. Is that him?
Yes, and he's a bowler
a fast bowler.
He's a fast bowler that actually can bat a little bit, but I think he's more of a bowler than he is an all-rounder. As far as I'm concerned, Rob, thank you for your question. I think he is still a work in progress at this point. He is still quite young. This is only his second or third season in the state side.
Yeah.
So he still probably has a little long way to go in development before he's able to push to the Australian setup. Much like another young guy that I have been keeping an eye on in my time when I can, and that is a guy by the name of Jake Fraser McGurk. Now, this guy is a batter for the state side and plays for the Richmond/Monash Cricket District Club, and played for my local cricket club as a junior before getting found by the district club at his age.
Yeah.
This is a kid that was there with his dad at the local cricket club, with his dad practicing everything: batting, bowling, wicket keeping, fielding, you name it. He was doing everything. So I'm very interested to see how everything goes from here for sure. So
just a quick update before we finish here tonight. We've got the New Zealand cricket team playing Afghanistan in the T20 World Cup, Chris, and looks like the Kiwis are off to a pretty good start. After 5 overs, Afghanistan are 3 for 21.
Oh, Jesus, they are on the back foot. The Afghan
My word, they are. If New Zealand win that game, it's all over for the other teams like India and Afghanistan. They basically can't make it.
No, exactly right.
India would have to be the big surprise out of those. Out of all the teams that are going to miss out, assuming New Zealand win, India, who would have thought that they wouldn't have qualified?
Oh, 100%. 100%. At the start of the tournament, if you saw India, Pakistan, and everybody else in that group, you would have thought, nah, top two
lock in India for starters straight away.
Lock in India and lock in Pakistan potentially, because Pakistan love playing in the UAE at the moment, considering what's been going on in Pakistan at the present time. So they've been playing most of their games in the UAE, despite the fact they're trying to take some games back to Pakistan, which is which some would say is
Too dangerous.
long.
Mm.
Yeah.
All right, mate. Well, thanks again for taking charge of the show tonight. As we saw, Joe is not going to be able to do it any longer. So you're in charge from now on, Beachy. So thanks very much for doing that. And we'll look forward to seeing everyone again next Sunday night at 8 o'clock when we present another edition of Blue Sunday. And don't forget, during the week, if you want to make comments on the show, you can go to our Facebook page, In the Blue Corner, our group page. And also, if you want to make a comment on our YouTube channel, again, In the Blue Corner, Blue Sunday, subscribe, like, do all of those things, and you'll get the notifications, set reminders if you like that the show's coming up, and you'll be reminded on your phone or computer that the show's about to start. So, yet again, Beachy, unless there's anything more that you want to say?
No, I think that's pretty
Signing
much
off?
it. Pretty much it, guys. I will probably do a better job in the comments next time because there was a lot that was going on tonight.
No, that's fine. No problems.
And you know, don't get me wrong, I was watching the comments and I was looking for the right one to pick up, but we're working on the fly here tonight, guys.
You did brilliantly. You did brilliantly at very, very short notice. So thanks again, mate. You've done a marvellous job. And we'll catch up with you next Sunday night at 8 o'clock, everyone. Bye for now.
Good on you guys. See you later.